Welcome back to Exousia's Grant Talk. I'm Danny Arthur, and I'm so glad to have you along with me today as we talk about Mission Multiply. You just watched two clips. What you saw was one church, one community, two expressions of the same calling. The Sunday service was worship, prayer, preaching, discipleship, the sacred heart of what a congregation is. The Tuesday program, the food, job training, family services, and community care, that's the hands of the same congregation, extended into the neighborhood. Now, here is the question this video is going to answer. Honestly, completely, and without apology, can grants fund your church? The short answer is not all of it. The nuanced answer is the one that actually matters. It's what we're going to spend the next 13 minutes unpacking. Because once you understand what grants cannot fund and why, you will see clearly, perhaps for the first time, the extraordinary scope of what they can fund. And that picture may change how you think about your church's financial future forever. The church is not just a place of worship, called to worship God and to serve the community. Grants cannot reach the first calling unless they're faith-based, but they are designed precisely to resource the second. Let's start with the boundary, because ignoring it doesn't make it smaller. The overwhelming majority of non-faith-based grants from grantors, including government grants, secular private foundations, corporate giving programs, and most community foundations, will not fund activities that are primarily religious in nature. This is a real limitation, and it applies to some of the most central activities of congregational life. What most non-faith-based grants will not fund? Grants can fund this: a nutrition education class open to all community members, held at your church on Tuesday afternoons. What it cannot fund is Sunday morning worship costs, including musicians, sound equipment, bulletins, or pastoral sermon preparation time. Grants can fund a counseling program staffed by licensed clinicians serving anyone in the community in need of mental health support. But grants cannot fund your prayer ministry, your healing services, or your devotional programming, even if it's genuinely helpful to participants. Grants can fund a financial literacy workshop series open to all residents, focused on budgeting and debt management too, but grants are not likely to fund tithing education, stewardship sermons, or programs that condition participation on faith affiliation. Grants can fund building renovations to and for community use space that houses open access social service programs. But unless it's faith-based, it's not likely to fund sanctuary renovation, chapel construction, or any space used exclusively for religious worship. Let me say something important here. This boundary is not an attack on your faith. It's not a statement that your worship is less valuable than your programs. It's just a practical, legal, and ethical framework that protects the integrity of public and philanthropic funding. And here's the thing. Once you understand it clearly, it stops feeling like a wall and starts feeling like a map that shows you exactly which parts of your church's work are eligible for significant external investments. The grant boundary does not say your faith practices are less important. It says your community service work is independently fundable, and it's waiting for you to claim that funding. Before we get to the practical benefits, I want to pause for a moment that I think matters deeply for how you receive what comes next. In virtually every faith tradition, there are two great callings held in tension: the call to worship, to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the call to serve, to love your neighbor as yourself, to do justice, to care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger, the poor, These are not two different missions. They are two expressions of one mission. The same heart that opens in worship on Sunday reaches out in service on Tuesday. They are inseparable. Grants cannot touch the first expression, again, unless they're faith-based. But they are built quite literally for the second. When a foundation funds your food pantry, they are not funding your faith. They are funding the fruit of your faith. They are investing in the tangible, measurable, community-transforming expression of the values that your congregation holds sacred. That is not a compromise. That is a calling, resourced. Faith without works is dead. Works without faith lose their anchor. Grants fund the works, and your faith animates everything. The question is not whether you can be a church and accept grants. You can. The question is whether you are willing to see the full scope of what your church does, not just the Sunday morning expression, as worthy of serious strategic investment. So how exactly do grants benefit a church that cannot use them for worship? Let me count the ways. And I want you to hear each one, not as a consolation prize, but as a real, substantial, strategic advantage. Benefit 1, funding programs that serve your community fully and sustainably. This is the most direct benefit, and it cannot be overstated. Every dollar a grant contributes to your food pantry, your grief share program, your recovery ministry, your job training program, your after-school program, your counseling services, your housing support, is a dollar that does not need to come from your congregation's tithes and offerings. Grants allow you to expand the scope, the scale, the reach, and the sustainability of your community service programs without placing the entire burden on your church members. More families fed, more youth mentored, more people served at no additional cost to your church congregation. Benefit 2, free congregational giving for what only the church can fund. Here is a strategic insight that changes the math entirely. When grants pay for your community programs, your members' tithes and offerings, pledges, fundraising are freed up to fund the things that grants cannot touch. The sanctuary, the pastoral ministerial staff, the spiritual formation programs, the missions works. Every dollar that flows into your community programs is, in effect, a dollar returned to your congregation's giving capacity for the sacred work that no secular funding will ever underwrite. Grants and congregational giving are not competing funding streams. They are complementary ones. Benefit number 3, building organizational infrastructure that serves the whole church. Many grants include funding for organizational capacity, the systems, the staff, the structures that support program delivery. When a grant funds a program coordinator, that coordinator's administrative skills benefit the entire organization. When a grant funds a data tracking system, that system can be used across all programs. When a grant funds staff training, trained staff serve the congregation as well as the program. The organizational muscle built through grant-funded programs strengthens the entire church, not just the funded activity. Benefit number 4, it expands your network and community relationships. Grant-funded programs connect your church to networks and relationships it would not otherwise access. Funders introduce grantees to other grantees. Government partners open doors to other government resources. Community partnerships formed around a grant program often produce referral relationships, co-sponsorship opportunities, and collaborative programming that extend far beyond the original grant. Every grant your church receives is simultaneously a relationship with a funder, a network of peers, and a signal to your community that your organization is credible, funded, and serious about the work that it's doing. It becomes very mission-minded and outreach-centric. Benefit 5, it elevates your church's profile and community credibility. There is a credibility that comes with grant funding that is difficult to manufacture any other way. When a respected foundation invests in your church's programs, it sends a signal to your community and to other funders that your work has been elevated and found worthy. Grant announcements, press coverage, funder relationships, and the simple fact of having passed a competitive review process all contribute to your church's standing as a serious community institution. That credibility opens doors to partnerships, to volunteers, to future funding, and to community members who might never have walked through your doors otherwise. Benefit number 6, it helps you to develop the data and documentation that tells your story. Grant programs require outcomes measurement, participant tracking, and regular reporting. While this discipline can feel like administrative overhead at first, it produces something invaluable: documented evidence of your church's community impact. That evidence, captured in grant reports, program evaluation, and participant outcome data, becomes the most powerful tool that you have for every future grant proposal that you write, every community-founded presentation, every conversation with a potential partner or donor. Grants teach churches to tell their story in the most compelling way possible, with names, faces, and numbers. Benefit number 7, it creates a financial model resilient enough to weather any storm. A church funded entirely by Sunday morning offerings is, financially speaking, one economic recession, one pastoral transition, or one COVID pandemic away from serious instability. Grant funding, built into a broader, diversified revenue strategy, becomes or creates organizational resilience. When economic hardship reduces congregational giving, grant-funded programs continue operating. When an unexpected need arises in the community, an organization with established funder relationships has pathways to emergency resources. Grants are not just about what you can do today. They are about ensuring the mission continues regardless of what tomorrow brings. I want to bring all of this together with what I call the multiplier effect. Here's the picture. Imagine your church as a building with 2 wings. The first wing is the faith wing: worship, prayer, discipleship, spiritual formation. The second wing is the service wing: food programs, youth services, community health, family support. The second wing is the service wing: food programs, youth services, community health, family support. Both wings matter. Both require resources, but only one wing is predominantly eligible for external grant funding. When grant dollars fund the service wing, something remarkable happens. Your congregation's giving, which was previously stretched across both wings, can now concentrate where it's needed most. The faith wing is fully funded. The service wing is fully funded. Both are stronger. And then it multiplies further. The service wing, now professionally resourced, serves more people. Those people encounter the congregation. Some become members, some become donors, some become volunteers who serve in both wings. This is Outreach 101. Grant funding doesn't divide your church's mission. It multiplies it. Every grant dollar invested in your community programs is simultaneously funding your mission, freeing your congregation, growing your reach, and building the organizational foundation for everything that comes next. I want to give you a real picture of the multiplier effect. A mid-sized urban congregation began pursuing grants for its food pantry and workforce development program. Over 4 years, they secured $320,000 in grant funding, entirely for community service programs. In that same period, their congregational giving increased by 31% because members understood that their tithes were going toward the distinctly spiritual work of the church: worship, pastoral ministry, missions, rather than being divided across programs that grants could now sustain. The programs expanded, the congregation deepened, the community impact doubled. 2 streams, 1 flourishing church. Let me make this tangible. Here is a representative picture of what many churches already do and what grants are designed to fund. As I go through this list, I want you to check off mentally everything that your church does or could do. These following program areas. Churches frequently run, and they're highly grant eligible. Food security programs, from food pantries, hot meal programs, weekend backpack programs for food insecure children, mobile food distribution, senior meal delivery, community gardens, homeless and housing emergency. You might offer emergency financial assistance for rent and utilities, transitional housing support, rapid rehousing navigation, homeless prevention counseling. You might look at your youth development programs, after-school tutoring, summer learning programs, mentorship, college preparation, leadership development, sports, recreation, arts programs, educational programs. Then consider that many of our churches offer workforce development, from job readiness training, resume assistance, interview coaching, financial literacy, vocational skills training, small business. Then there's our ever-present family support services, from parenting classes to domestic violence support, family counseling, emergency childcare, diaper banks, baby supply programs, foster care support. Many churches also offer senior services, from Meals on Wheels to friendly visitor programs, transportation assistance, activity programs, social isolation prevention, caregiver support. Then there are our health and wellness programs, from community health fairs to chronic disease management support, mental health first aid training, substance recovery programs, health screenings. Some of our churches are also beginning to offer immigrant and refugee services, from English as a second language class to citizenship preparation, cultural orientation, legal resource navigation, community integration programs. Then there's also the reentry and justice programs, support for formerly incarcerated individuals, reentry, case management, family reunification support, community reintegration programming. Many of our churches are operating early childhood education, from Head Start partnerships to preschool programs, family literacy, early intervention support, parent-child programs. And then how many of our churches step up for disaster relief and recovery, from emergency response, disaster preparedness training, long-term recovery case management, community resilience building. Then there's also the capacity building, organizational development, staff training, financial management systems, technology upgrades, program evaluation. I want you to stop and count. How many of those that I just mentioned does your church currently offer or could offer with the right resources? Because each one of those programs is fundable. Each one of those programs that I just mentioned have foundations, government agencies, and corporations who are actively looking for community partners, exactly like your church, to deliver exactly this work. The boundary that excludes your worship service is the same boundary that opens every one of these doors. They are connected. Understand the boundary and walk through the open doors. Here's one final strategic tip. When identifying your church's grant eligible programs, focus on services that are open to all community members, not just church members, that address documented community needs and have measurable outcomes. These three criteria map directly onto what most funders require for eligibility. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you later.